Hello everybody, this is Snaris again, and I'm back with Grimm Eclipse. This is my Eclipse difficulty solo walkthrough. This is Chapter 7, The Island of Dr. Merlot. And I'm using Gang, and for the final time before I use Blake for the next 3 missions. And this mission is where we first get introduced to the robots, the red dudes, these dudes here. These things are a problem, so get in there with a heavy attack as much as you can, and don't be afraid to use ultimates here in this part of the beach, just get rid of them. They have such a high attack range, and sure, it's okay to parry them and they become very vulnerable afterwards, but there's that many of them. They do multiple attacks, they chase you down like crazy, and when you're trying to charge an attack or do a gun attack, they can reach you across wide distances. And on Eclipse difficulty, they don't get any stronger, but there's more of them. And when there's more of them, it's more of a problem. Now luckily this environment here is a lot more open, so it's not so bad. This mission can be pretty lengthy itself, but the final encounter is going to be a transition because I died in there pretty early on, but for the rest of it, it'll just be fighting Grimm and nothing really all that different from what you've seen, and I don't believe there's any super variants, so that'll be sped up. Everything else here will be at normal speed though. And when it comes to those final missions, I guess I have a lot more to talk about in the moment because a lot of those encounters can be rather rough. It's strange to say, but the last few missions are some of my favourites out of this game, and I do think they're broken design-wise, of course, but oh, that's so good to look at. I do believe Yang has the largest radius on her ultimate, if that means anything to you guys, but you know, I suppose it makes sense, eh? I'm not sure if this is just a Yang thing, but I suspect her heavy attacks in particular, out of all the characters, get all enemies into a state where you can hit R1 in order to hurt them for some extra free damage and get iframes on them, more than any other character. That's what was so confusing about it, because when I first started playing the game, and it said that heavy attacks open up more opportunities for team attacks, I'm like, oh, is this some sort of special combo that you can do with other partners and other teammates and everything? And then I realised it's just not the case, because every character has a team attack skill tree, a real small one, and you think that might be like a combination attack they do, but it's not. All it is you using a heavy attack to stun the enemies, and when the R1 prompt appears above their head, it's not just you can also have your co-op partners wound them as well by going and pushing R1. So that's sort of what team attack in this game means. It means you leave them vulnerable, open to do some sort of finishing move or a high damage move, but everyone on the team can do it if they're close enough and they go ahead and do it. You know, part of teamwork. So it's not actually a combination attack, so it's a little bit confusing with the way they laid it out there, or maybe it's just me. Alright, so you come to these docks, you're going to fight more Grimm. I do believe a couple of the robots will show up, and you've got to be careful not to get boxed in, although I could be wrong about that. This mission you don't fight a whole lot of the robots, it's usually just the beginning and maybe a couple other parts here and there, but yeah, the next few missions you're pretty much going to be fighting them almost exclusively. And then the last mission you'll be fighting a bit of both, pretty evenly. And so there's not a whole lot happening right now as I take a very long, awkward moment of silence, but you know, I don't know, just seeing this again and playing it again and you know, getting that fever for more RWBY, or at least more of what RWBY used to be. I don't know what I would want out of the series if it was to ever come back, if Rooster Teeth wanted to get back on board with it. Because I think it may as well just be dead and kept only alive through fandoms and passion online by people that are huge fans and always will be huge fans. But I almost wonder if they jumped the gun a little bit, if it was maybe worth having the team go around the world doing missions, retrieving these artifacts, but perhaps Beacon Academy was still okay, and that maybe a final season could be like one last stand against a secret Grimm army. You remember in season 3 when they had all those Grimm flooding the city and you had the robots turning on everyone, but even in season 2 when you had the Grimm being transported underground through the subway system, when the train came and barreled on through and the Grimm came up out of the ground. Like, if it was given a bit more presentation, I still think that could have been a more fitting finale for the series. Like the idea that this is a impenetrable headquarters for Team RWBY, and then you know, they're going out into the world to Vacuo, to Haven, all these different places, and you know, eventually they always come back. You know, this is sort of like a central place they convene at. You know, they're still doing their studies, they're still doing school stuff, and you know, you can still have room for wholesome moments, but when it gets out into the real world, that's when things start getting quite hairy, quite dangerous. And yeah, having the school be infiltrated and having it taken over by Grimm, and they have to try and take it back and defeat Salem while they're at it. A lot of that stuff, I reckon that should have been the finale of the whole series. Stretched out, of course, meaningful locations, meaningful battles, and uncovering the different plot threads and all the stuff about the maidens and the artifacts and stuff, but yeah, I just think they kind of lost the plot somewhere along the way, trying to make something out of what was never really there. Because Monty had general ideas of what he wanted to do, but you know, it's as I've said before earlier in this series here, that he was a great fight coordinator when it came to animation, and he knew how to tell a story through combat, but outside of that, I just don't think he was a great world builder. I just don't think it ever really interested him, or at least not as much. By the way, what I was doing there is a chest piece up on that container, and I believe what you have to do is jump off the railings, dash towards it in the air, but then you just start doing light attacks, and it kind of carries you and floats you away to the edge of the container, and you can grab it. It's a lot easier with the other characters because their mid-air dodge is a lot better. And this is the final wave I was talking about, and this is where things are sped up. Because this is actually quite a long sequence and a long fight. It doesn't look like it, given the time that's left and, you know, double speed, it's only a little bit more. It still feels like a really long fight and rather dull, I think. But I'm going to make the most of it because this is my last chance playing Yang and every other character in the game besides Blake. And you get to see a little bit more if you need a reminder on why she's so great. Because by all accounts, based on the numbers, this should have been a mission, or at least the last mission should have been where I used Blake. But no, I decided to hold off on it and use Yang instead because I knew I'd never get to use her again. I just wanted to be sure that for the last few missions, you know, you understood why I loved Blake so much in this game and why she almost certainly guarantees success after a while. So the first wave takes a long time, the others not so much. A lot of enemies, a lot to deal with. Got 3 different Urs. I don't know if having one of them be stunned and the other one goes to do that slam attack, but then you just, even if you just punch them regularly, if it makes them more passive and they don't do the slam. Because the Urs, the Beowulfs, all that, their attacks don't really mean anything until they do their slams or their big heavy attacks. And when that happens, you know, they're waiting for you to be vulnerable to try and jump their friends. I should have used an ultimate there to take them all out, but I didn't, because I almost got jammed in there. And so the next mission is not really all that long if you know what you're doing and you do quite well, but it's always the last fight then in Chapter 8 that always gets to me. Chapter 9 consistently is pretty simple, but it's the final fight there that for the most part isn't tough, but it's always the last part of it that is rather tough. I know I got it on my first try like I've said before, but it's still a long fight and it still goes on for ages, and I don't know if I'll speed it up or if I'll speed up half of it, but yeah, I feel like it's one of those things where the environment is so small and the enemies are so dangerous. I just had to show you sort of my movements, because even here in this open environment against Beowulfs of all things, real simple to deal with, it might be a little hard to follow along with what I'm doing. Anyway, I think I've rambled on enough and my throat's getting kind of dry. I'll save it for Chapter 8. And yeah, the beginning of a long sequence of tough fights and very, very brutal inadequacies with the difficulty and being only one player. And I'll see you then.